You take a bit of a wider stance to also hit the glutes as well. Personally, when I do squats, I'm trying to train my ass and my quads at the same time. So I like... What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to be going over a video from Hussein Farhat, uploaded 3 hours ago, and it's how I grew my legs fast. So I'm going to be critiquing it today, telling you what I think he did right, what I think he did wrong. I've already watched the video, but I'm going to give you my opinion on it.
I went from chicken legs and skipping leg day to building strong and aesthetic legs that somewhat match my upper body, and all of that in less than 3 years.
Yeah, I've pretty much done the same thing, I guess. I've almost been training for 3 years. When it hits like May 1st, that's where I call it. I don't remember the exact day that I started training, but almost 3 years now. And I used to have chicken legs too, but right now I think my quads are one of my best body parts. I think I've escaped that era, and I train my legs really damn hard. If you're a guy out there, you gotta train your legs. You don't just want to have this jacked upper body and no legs whatsoever. At least train your legs a little bit. For me, I like legs just as much as the upper body. I want that symmetry and proportion, but if you don't want that, that's fine. Have smaller legs, but just don't skip leg day and train your freaking calves too.
So let's jump in and go over the exact exercises that help me blow up my legs fast. And exercise number 1 for the quads is going to be hack squats. If you want to build big and thick quads, hack squats are one of the best exercises you can do. And the biggest tip I could give you for hack squats is to place your feet lower on the platform.
Yep, think it's great. Hack squats, a fantastic leg exercise, and definitely to emphasize the quads more, place your feet as low as you comfortably can on the platform. That's going to allow you to get more knee flexion, bigger stretch on the quads. It's going to grow them more. So when you're doing squats like that, definitely place your feet lower on the platform. And I would also recommend you take a bit of a wider stance to also hit the glutes as well. Personally, when I do squats, I'm trying to train my ass and my quads at the same time. So I like to take a bit of a wider stance, so you can train both at the same time. But first tip, like it a lot.
These I do 2 to 3 sets to failure while really focusing on the tension and the depth. If you don't have a hack squat machine, don't worry, there's a few other alternatives that you can do. The first one I definitely recommend would be Smith machine back squats. And if you don't have a Smith machine, that's also not a problem. You can do barbell back squats instead. But what I don't like about barbell back squats is that it doesn't have that stability, so you have to focus on staying stable while performing the exercise.
Smith machine squats and barbell back squats are also fine exercises. For me, personally, I would, instead of a barbell back squat, I also like a belt squat or a leg press, and that's because when you do barbell back squats or even the Smith machine squats, you're getting a lot of axial fatigue because it's compressing your spine. So if you do a belt squat or a leg press, you pretty much get none of that, and you avoid axial fatiguing altogether. But those are also 2 fine exercises. Just make sure you're going low, control the weight, get a deep stretch, and you're good.
And now we move on to exercise number 2 for the quads, which is going to be leg extensions. Now the best tip I can give you for these is to pause and squeeze at the top for 1 to 2 seconds on every single rep.
Not the craziest fan at pausing for 1 to 2 seconds in the contraction. If it allows you to get like a better mind muscle connection or whatever, I do think it can have some benefits, but I would much rather see a pause in the stretch position, because that's the more hypertrophic part of the range of motion. I think it's okay to pause at the top, but if you had to pick one, would definitely prefer the stretch. But hey, what do I know? 16-year-old idiot on YouTube.
And from here, I lower slowly while controlling the weights, and then I go back up again. And for these, I like to do 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps while also going to failure on every single set. And yeah, that's basically all I do for my quads.
I think that's good too. 2 exercises for the quads. Me personally, that's exactly what I do as well. I'll always pick some kind of squatting or leg press movement, and then I'll always do a leg extension. I always do a leg extension because it will hit all 4 heads of the quads really well, including the rectus femoris, which isn't hit very well on squats and leg presses because your hips are not in a fixed position, and the rectus femoris crosses the hip joint, so it can never reach a full contractile or stretch position because your hips are, extending and whatnot. But because your hips are fixed in a leg extension, the rectus femoris head actually contracts and stretches. And I also like in the video, he said he's setting the seat as far back as he can. That's going to put a bigger stretch on that rectus femoris head. So for the quads, I'm really liking it. Only minor thing is not the craziest fan of the 1 to 2 second pause at the top. But other than that, that's being nitpicky. This is some good stuff.
The hamstrings. And exercise number 1 for the hamstrings is going to be Smith machine Romanian deadlifts. So this has been one of the most effective exercises for building thick hamstrings and glutes.
Smith machine Romanian deadlift, first exercise for the hamstrings. I really like that. I really love a good RDL. I do it every single exercise. Not every single exercise, every single leg day. I think for maximum hamstring development, you want 1 hip hinge movement and 1 leg curl, and the RDL for me anyway is the best hip hinge movement you can do. He's doing on a Smith machine. I don't have a Smith machine at home, so I always just use a barbell, which is okay. I think the Smith machine might be slightly better for me anyway, as long as it's not one where it's on an angle. I freaking hate the one on the angles. That's dog shit in my opinion. I just don't like it. But if you like it, that's okay. The only other thing I would like to see is if he has the flexibility for it. Possibly doing it on a deficit. If you watch me do my RDLs, I always do it on a deficit just so I can get an even bigger stretch at the bottom. But if he feels comfortable doing it the way he's doing it, he doesn't need a deficit, that's okay. For me anyways, I always use a deficit. I always like to get that big stretch, and this exercise is not just going to work the hamstrings, but it's also going to work the glutes too. So great exercise, highly recommend it.
To kind of imagine like you're pushing your butt outwards as you're doing it, this is how you're going to be able to feel that big stretch on your hamstrings.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. Another tip I would actually give is to make sure the bar is touching your shins like at all times. If you start to have the bar, like if I actually trained legs today, like if I'm doing an RDL, you want the bar to kind of scrape on your shins the whole time. If it starts to come out like this, you're gonna end up feeling it in your lower back, because your lower back is gonna have to contract, or your spinal erectors anyway are gonna have to contract a lot harder to keep you upright. So definitely want that bar to be as close to your shins as possible. I know that's like a big thing with RDLs. A lot of people feel it in their lower back, but that's probably because the bar is moving forward.
And this honestly has been my favorite exercise to really isolate the hamstrings and feel that stretch and contraction. Here, I make sure I sit with my back flat and I curl my heels toward my glutes and squeeze as hard as possible. Once I'm in this position, I pause for 1 to 2 seconds, and then I slowly return to the start while controlling the weight.
And he does the seated hamstring curl over the lying hamstring curl. I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, the seated hamstring curl, you're going to get more stretch. I feel you're more locked in, so I like it better. But, of course, if you do like the lying leg curl more, or if that's the only one you have access to, it's definitely still going to grow your hamstrings as well. But for me anyway, and for Hussein, he's doing the seated leg curl. I think that is the best exercise you can do for your hamstrings, even better than an RDL, and that's because you have 4 heads to your hamstrings, and 1 head only crosses the knee joint, so it doesn't get affected by your hip position. So when you do a hip hinge movement like the Romanian deadlift, it doesn't work at all. You're only hitting 3/4 of your hamstring when you do an RDL, so definitely want to include that leg curl.
Leg curls. The only reason why I prefer seated leg curls is because they've been proven to build more muscle over time. And yeah, that's basically all I do for the hamstrings. And now we'll move on to the muscle that almost everybody forgets to train, the adductors. And for this part, I just do one single exercise, and that is the hip adduction machine.
So with the adductors, I think it's fine to train them. Like, there's nothing bad is gonna happen. But for me anyway, I think that if you do really deep squats and stuff like that, you're gonna get a lot of adductor work. I don't really think it's necessary to do that. I think you can overtrain them if you do a lot of really deep squats, as well as I don't remember what that machine is called, the one where you go like that or whatever. I think you can be overtraining them, but it's a good exercise if you need adductors. For me anyway, I don't think I do. Go really deep on squats and it's gonna smash them anyway.
And yeah, that's basically all I do to train my adductors. And now we move on to the glutes. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I do skip my glutes quite often, but if I'm not skipping them, the main exercise that I do is the hip abduction machine. It's really one of the best isolation exercise for your glutes.
So the hip abduction machine is primarily gonna train the glute medius and minimus. It's still going to hit the glute max, but not as much as those other two. I think it's a great exercise. I think a lot of guys neglect the glute medius and minimus. I just recently started doing some cable hip abductions to train them. But he also says he skips glutes. But I would argue that if you're doing hack squats and RDLs, the glute max is getting smashed from that. And then if you add, that for the glute medius and glute minimus, I think he's training his glutes real damn good. I don't think they need any extra volume in my opinion anyway. I mean, that's all I really do for glutes. Every now and again, maybe if I do a belt squat, because the weight's positioned in front of you, it's a lot more quad emphasis. So if I do a belt squat, then maybe I'll do some like barbell hip thrusts. But if you're doing like hack squats or barbell back squats and RDLs, that glute max is getting freaking smashed, bro. So he says he skips glutes, but for me anyway, I don't think he is.
That's basically all I do for my glutes. And now we move on to the part that everybody skips, the calves. Now for the calves, the exercise that I've been spamming recently that has really worked for me is the standing calf raises. And here's how I like to do them. So for this exercise, I like to use the 2-second rule, which means every single part of the movement will last 2 seconds. So if you do the math, every single one of your reps should last for 8 seconds in total.
The standing calf raise, I 100% agree with that. It's way superior than to the seated calf raise because the gastrocnemius gets stretched way more when you have a straight knee, and studies saw equivalent muscle gain with the soleus muscle. So seated calf raise, in my opinion, today is completely outdated. If you're gonna do calves, always do it with a straight knee. When I do calves at home, I actually have the belt squat, but my favorite calf machine is the weight stack, like the seated leg press or whatever, and you just do toe presses. I think that's the best. But when I'm at home, I just use the belt squat and go on my toes. You've probably seen if you watched any of my leg day videos. But then he likes to do 8-second reps. Now for me, that sounds like a really long time. I don't think your reps have to last 8 seconds. I mean, that is a long time for one rep. Like, if you're doing a set of 15, which for calves anyway, I do recommend higher reps. I mean, geez, that's a lot. That's a lot. I think 8 seconds is a little long. Honestly, you just have to control the negative. If you're controlling the negative, you should be fine. I don't think you have to use 8 seconds, but if it works for him, it works for him.
Number one I can give you is to really focus on the stretch and the squeeze on every single rep. Make sure you're not just throwing weights around, whether you're doing RDLs, hack squats, or even leg curls. You want to make sure you're in control throughout the whole rep because the more you feel your muscle, the more it's going to grow.
Yep, I like that. nothing to really say there. I think it's great. I would emphasize the stretch a little more than the contraction, but other than that, I think it's great. First tip out of 4 there.
Now, tip number 2 is to train to failure, because if you never push close to failure, your legs are not gonna grow. Trust me, I know how hard it is, especially for legs, but if you really wanna see that growth, you need to push yourself to failure.
So I actually really like this tip. He goes to failure on every set, and I know a lot of the science guys in the community are gonna be like,
oh, actually, you should go at, like RPE, like 8 or 7 or whatever, 3 RIR, whatnot.
listen, in my experience or whatever, I take every set to failure. Why? I do believe that, if you leave 3 reps in the tank or whatever, that can work if you're a beginner. And technically, I would say I'm maybe on the intermediate stage now, 3 years of training. I mean, I'd say that's about intermediate. So even before, I can definitely get away with not training as hard and still make gains because I'm young, I'm still growing, I'm just getting out of the beginner stage, so I can get away with it. But if you're an advanced trainer, definitely you got to be pushing your sets hard, because you have no idea how much you could be holding back psychologically. If you go to violence and war level, if someone puts a gun to your head and says, if you don't do another rep, I'm gonna pull the trigger, I bet you're cranking out 2 or like 5 more reps, okay? So I think it's important to go to failure very often, just because you could be holding some back. Even if you're like, oh, I can't do it, psychologically you could. You don't know. So I always like to do that. Like, this is an example. So today, when I was training legs, normally for my first set of RDLs, I'll do 175 pounds, and I normally get that for 15 reps. But today, I accidentally put on 170 pounds. And guess what? I only got 15 reps. I didn't realize when I was doing the set, and I thought I pushed all the way to failure, but it was 5 pounds lighter. So if I really dug deep, I bet you I could have got 16. But I thought I was at failure. That's why I feel that even if you think you're at failure, you may not be. So I think it's important to really try to go to failure on every time. But again, what do I know, 16-year-old manlet idiot moron on YouTube who has no scientific degree on anything? Hey, that's my opinion.
Tip number 3 is to progressively overload.
Okay, I mean, I think that tip is pretty simplistic. I mean, if you're training to failure all the time, if you're training to failure all the time, you don't even have to worry about like, oh, I need to make sure I'm adding this much weight, because you're always pushing the limit. If you're always training to failure, you're always pushing your maximum effort. So I think that one is, I mean, it's a good tip, obviously, but I think a lot of people know that by now.
Tip number 4 is to recover properly. Your legs definitely need more time to recover, and I've noticed this from personal experience.
Yeah, definitely. I always find, oh, camera lag there. I always find, specifically with my legs, especially my hamstrings, can get quite sore, especially muscles, but I feel like that's very individual. Like for me anyway, muscles that get really sore are my hamstrings, my chest, and my traps. Other than that, I mean, my quads can get a little sore too, but like I never feel my lats really getting sore. My biceps, my triceps, they're just never sore. My shoulders are like never sore, barely once in a blue moon. So I think that's very individual, but definitely I think more often than not, it's probably legs that are going to be sore for most people. I mean, you're definitely pushing the hardest on legs, you're moving the most weight, and your legs are, you're using them at all times, so you're walking around on them. So definitely sleep, getting adequate sleep, eating protein, carbs, fats, whatever, eating enough calories for your body to build muscle and recover.
Obviously, training is important, but if you're not recovering or eating right, your legs are never going to grow regardless of how hard you train. Which is why I recommend every single person watching this video to sleep at least 7 to 9 hours depending on your sweet spot. And sleep is probably the most important thing, to be honest, because this is where your body recovers, releases growth hormones, and rebuilds muscle. And if you're in a caloric deficit and you're wondering why you're not able to grow your legs, that's exactly why. You're not giving your legs what they need. And here's what worked for me. So first thing you want to make sure you're doing is that you're in a caloric surplus to be able to build muscle effectively. And that means you need to eat 300 to 500 calories above your maintenance.
Not a fan of that. If you're eating 500 in a 500 calorie surplus, you're gonna get fat, okay? That's putting on 1 pound every single week. You're gonna get fat. There's no, unless you're on a if you start taking juice, then you got nutrient partitioning, which is going to occur. Maybe you can get away with it. But if you're natural and you go in a 500 calorie surplus and you keep doing that, I'm telling you, you're getting fat. And most of you watching this video already are already fat, so you shouldn't be bulking even more. You should be going on a freaking cut, get to a healthy body fat percentage, and main gain from there. Keep your body fat the same and slowly build muscle over time. I really don't like it when people promote bulking and cutting because it's not healthy, and you can get the same results by main gaining. Just think about it. If you bulk, you bulk. Bulking, it will help you put on more muscle. It will. But if you bulk, then you have to cut. And the opposite of a bulk is a cut, and the opposite of putting on more muscle is putting on less. So why not just meet in the middle and main gain? It's healthier, and you can sustain that for the rest of your life. Now, I'm not telling, if you are very skinny, or the word that rhymes with rexic, I'm not gonna say it because I don't want YouTube to get mad at me, then yes, certainly go on a bulk. But bulk to a healthy body fat percentage for you and keep it there for the rest of your life. Now, if you're competing in a bodybuilding show or you have a weight cap to make for some competition or whatever, obviously that's a different set of circumstances. But for the majority of people, you don't need to bulk and cut. That shit should be vaulted by now.
I definitely recommend you have a carb-loaded meal before going to the gym, because that's what's going to give you energy to push through all of those exercises. And yeah, that's basically how I grew my legs fast over the last 3 years.
And the last tip before he goes there, have some carbs before the workout. For me, I know there are some people who like to train fasted. For me, I think that's dumb. I think you just function, your body's main source of energy is carbs. I always think it's beneficial to have a pre-workout meal. I will never train fasted. If you're one of the people who likes to intermittent fast and whatever, by all means. But for me, always like to get in some protein and some carbs, because if you fast and you skip your first meal of the day, you're missing your first opportunity for muscle protein synthesis to occur. There are 5 opportunities for muscle protein synthesis to occur, and by skipping meal 1, you are missing one of those opportunities. And if you're training fasted, then why not start repairing those muscle tissues right away? Why wait? When you do a workout and you're fasted, you're not building any muscle. Your body's you need protein, water, and a stimulus for that muscle growth to occur. So if you don't have the protein, you ain't building muscle. But overall, I think Hussein Farhat knows what he's doing. He's got some great legs. Obviously, there's a big debate whether he's natty or not. I'm not going to get too much into that. Personally, I think he's natty. I think the evidence that Greg Doucette and him, posted, I think it's pretty valid. Obviously, you guys can have your own opinions. Obviously, he has an incredible physique, especially for only 3 years of training. I wish the guy all the best. And that is going to have to wrap up this video. Think he's doing well. The only minor things, I'm not a fan of that bulking and maybe that 1 to 2 second pause in the contraction. Not the biggest fan of that. But other than that, think he's got it down. Freaking jacked, huge legs. Go follow Hussein Farhat. I'll have his original video linked in the description. If you have enjoyed, make sure to smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new here. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.